I want to talk to you a little bit now, as a male, talking about this issue of sexism, misogyny, and harassment. I want to ask you first a quick question. How many of you would call yourself a feminist? Put your hand up if you'd call yourself a feminist. Okay, we've got the majority of the room. We've not got a full house. Now, I often ask that question in schools, and typically I get about a 50% response rate. 50% response saying, yeah, they're feminists. And I wonder why that is, because sometimes I think there's a misunderstanding about what feminism is. Feminism simply means the advocacy of women's rights on the ground of the equality of the sexes. I am a feminist. I'm a proud and passionate feminist. I passionately believe in the total equality of all people, of all genders, everywhere. And yet it seems that people have taken on the meaning around this word feminism as if in order to be a feminist, you have to be against men, you have to hate men, you have to be anti-men. I'm not anti-men, I am a man. But I passionately believe that all people should be treated fairly and equally. See, we have a problem. We have a problem in society. We've already heard a little bit about it. Here's a few things to give you a little bit of a reality check. On average in the UK, 1 rape per school day is reported to the police as having occurred on school premises, 1 per day. Almost a third of teenage girls say they've been sexually assaulted at school. 1 in 3 women will be beaten or sexually abused in their lifetimes. Almost 80% of girls say sexual assault happens sometimes or a lot between people of their age at school. 90% say they've been sent unsolicited dick pics, and that happens to them or their peers sometimes or a lot. 75% of girls report that pressure to provide sexual images of themselves happens sometimes or a lot. Each year, 15 million girls are married as children, and worldwide, more than 200 million women and girls have experienced female genital mutilation. We have a problem. This is dire. This is a pretty hideous picture that's painted there. And the question is, how did we get there? How do we get to this from the situation that we're in? What are the roots of this level of disparity between male and female? I want to argue that the problem is what's called socialization. We've all been socialized. Socialization is the process of learning how we are supposed to behave in a society. We're all socialized. We start learning from the moment we're born how we're supposed to behave, what we're supposed to like, what we're supposed to be like in different settings, different social settings. And that socialization can be all-consuming, such that we have blind spots and we don't recognize sometimes the influences that have shaped the way that we think and the way that we approach life, and therefore the way that we approach other people. Have a watch of this. Now, I think that's striking. And it's striking in particular because I never noticed that as a kid growing up, that women and girls were underrepresented or represented in a certain way within those books. I never even noticed as a dad reading stories to my kids that this was the case. I had a blind spot, and yet that can't possibly not affect us. And take, in addition to the fact that so many of those stories actually show women in a subordinate position to a man, men in a position of power, a man saving a woman, and the underlying message that leaves young men, young boys and girls with as they grow up. Socialization. The fact is, our society is so skewed in favor of male, we don't even recognize it. We don't even notice it. It's baked into the way our society works. Interesting, piano keyboards were designed with the handspan of an average male in mind. Not necessarily with malicious intent, not because we want to exclude necessarily all girls, but because at the time that pianos were designed, it was mostly men who were playing the piano or had access to be able to play the piano. But the fact is that actually disadvantages 87% of female pianists, and that leads to a disproportionate number of injuries amongst female pianists. You see, what we're talking about here is a systemic problem, a system that is biased in favor of male that we haven't even noticed. Sexism is not simply the individual acts of aggression or violence towards a person. It's the invisible systems that confer dominance on one group of people over another. What we have is a systemic problem, and that's why it's important that we don't simply point the finger. It's not about pointing at a few bad apples, or it's not about simply saying, well, it's not all men. Actually, it is all men. It's all people. We've all been socialized. We are all products of a culture. We're all products of an upbringing. We're all products of a society that is skewed against female. I am a recipient, as a male, of male privilege. Now, male privilege doesn't mean that males don't have problems, that they don't have struggles, that everything's easy for men. That's not what male privilege is about. It's simply about recognizing that as a man, I've been able to live without some of the negative effects of sexism. For example, and there's 160 of these if you look up everydayfeminism.com, I'm less likely to be interrupted when I speak. If I don't want to have children, I'm not accused of going against nature's instinct. I can have a casual, friendly conversation with a stranger without worrying that it's being taken as a sexual invitation. I can turn down a date without worrying about being verbally attacked or assaulted or even killed. I can drink in a bar alone, unbothered. Never had to think about these things. I can travel alone without fear of violence. I'm less likely to suffer domestic abuse or to be raped. I can stand in a crowded area on public transport without worrying about being groped. None of these things have ever even occurred to me. And yet this is the daily lived experience of women and girls all over the world. If I do a bad job at work, people don't make comments about how it's because of my biological sex. And I haven't had to grow up constantly seeing characters of my biological sex portrayed as weak or stupid. Have a watch of this.
What do we do? What do we do now?
So what do we do now?
What do we do now?
What are we gonna do?
What do we do? What do we do now? What do we do now?
Smile.
What do we do?
What do we do?
What do we do now?
So what do we do now?
What do we do now?
So what do we do now?
Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Again, we're talking about a message that comes through, a message that comes through over and over again that we haven't even been aware of, which leaves us with a skewed perception of male and female. It's not simply about a few bad apples. It's not about simply some men out there who are perpetuating misogynistic attitudes and views. We need to recognize, I think, that we're all part of the problem. I'm part of the problem. I need to change my mind. I need to think differently. I need to expand my understanding. I need to recognize that some people in this world have had a different experience to mine. Often we imagine that bullying works like this, and any kind of harassment, any kind of racism, sexism is a form of bullying, any kind of prejudice. And we imagine that there's a victim and there's a bully, and what we need to do to fix this problem is either sanction the bully or punish the bully, and that'll sort the problem out. But this isn't how bullying works. Bullying is always a group activity. The bully gets power from the people around, the silent majority, the bystanders, the onlookers, the people who, by their silence, by that culture of silence, give that bully, that ringleader, power. In other words, it's the system. The system is what perpetuates the power and therefore perpetuates the problem. We've got a problem in our schools, in our society with sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is unwanted behavior of a sexual nature. If it's unwanted, it's harassment. It doesn't matter whether it was intended as harassment. It doesn't matter whether you intended to cause offense. If it's unwanted, then it's harassment, and it is illegal. And we need to wake up to the fact this is rife, this is prevalent, this is going on every single day in our schools, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But sometimes we haven't had the education, haven't had the awareness about quite the extent of sexual harassment, the kinds of things which constitute sexual harassment. Being the target of sexual comments or jokes, having your clothing pulled, having sexual rumours spread about you, having your way blocked, being touched, grabbed or pinched, being shown pictures that you didn't want, being physically intimidated, sexual messages that you didn't want, ever felt intimidated because you reported something. If any of these have ever happened to you, then you have experienced sexual harassment. If you have ever participated in any of these things, then you have sexually harassed someone. And you may not have recognized that or meant to or intended to at the time, but it's important that we recognize that any unwanted behavior is unacceptable. If you don't want that behavior, if you don't want that attention, you don't have to put up with it. We need to call this out. We need to recognize that this is an issue. This isn't about hitting back at men, and we need to acknowledge the fact that actually there is a movement, a growing movement of men who feel the need to hit back at feminism, at the rise. Ever since the Me Too movement, there's been a growing movement of young men and boys who have felt, threatened, maybe felt like, hang on, well, we need to put men's side of this view. We need to kick back and give men's perspective on some of this stuff. And it's not that men shouldn't have a voice. Absolutely, men. I believe in the equality of all genders, as I've said already. But there's no need. There's been a growing incel movement. Incels, involuntary celibates, that's increased 25% in the last couple of years. And you'll be aware of Andrew Tate and the following that he has. And I don't really want to give him any airtime, but having said that, I think we need to address this, because if we're talking about changing the system, we need to address the fact that there are voices out there that are perpetuating misogynistic views, and people are following some of those people, not necessarily because they are misogynistic, but are being influenced and affected by those views. Just have a quick watch of this excerpt.
I love women. I have nothing against women at all. I'm not sexist in any regard. I'm not misogynist either. I'm a realist. Like, I'm a realistic person. As a realist, in the modern world, they're going to call you sexist, misogynist, etc. But I'm none of those things. I am just...
Why do they call you that? Why do they call you that?
Because I say...
What do you think it is that you say that makes people think you're like sexist?
Because I said the truth. I said that if a woman is going out with a man, she belongs to that man. That's his woman. So if she wants to do OnlyFans, she owes him some money because she's his. Yes. It's not about being property. It's about the fact that she belongs to him, and the intimate parts of her body belong to him because they're in a relationship. And if she wants to sell those, he has a stake in those parts of her body.
Now, this is crackers. Clearly, Andrew Tate does not understand what the word sexism and misogyny mean. What he has just expressed there, just to be absolutely clear, and I'm going to take his face off the screen. What he has just expressed there is exactly a misogynistic view, such as Gemma articulated earlier. Any view that depicts a person, a human person, as belonging to or the property of somebody else, that is by definition a misogynistic view. That is a sexist view. That is a view that is perpetuating a disparity, a hierarchy, a power differential between one group of people over another group of people. That is misogynistic. Now, you might say, okay, well, I don't follow him because of his misogynistic views. I follow him just because he's funny or he has some good business advice to give. But here's the issue. We're coming back to the system, back to the fact that where does the bully get their power? All human beings born free and equal in dignity and rights. Look, This is how you change a culture. This is how you change a society. The ringleader has power because of the people who are following that person. They may not be joining in, but they're following that person. How do you change a culture? How do you change that imbalance? You move away. You distance yourself from the voices that are perpetuating hate, that are perpetuating discrimination, and then the bully has no power. Just to move away, that's a start. But even we could go one better. If instead we decided to identify with, to understand, to listen to the lived experience of the people who are being victimized, in this case, women and girls who are daily experiencing harassment, assault of different degrees on a daily basis. If instead we would stand with them, with their value as a human person, then the bully has no power. Folks, this is where we all have a part to play in changing society, in hopefully being able to assert with confidence, every single one of us, I'm not going to allow myself to be treated as an object. I value myself. I am not somebody else's plaything or property. I am a unique and valuable human being. I don't need a man or a partner in order to be valid or worth something or to succeed in life. I am strong. I am powerful. Can you say that about yourself? Because that's the truth. This is what we need to move towards. And we need to wake up and recognize the disparity and the voices within our society that are perpetuating that disparity. Thank you very, very much.